Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another 19 Shadows in 2019 update. If you guys are new to my channel or new to this series, basically I am trying to pan 19 different eyeshadows from my collection in 2019. These shades were all selected randomly through a random number generator. If you'd like to catch the introduction to this video, if you missed it, I will leave it linked below. This project was inspired by Lexi here on YouTube, so I will leave her videos, her channel, as well as her playlist from previous years linked down below. And I know there are a bunch of other people currently doing projects similar to this right now too, so I will also leave any videos that I can find that are similar to this linked down below too, so you guys can binge watch videos like this if you enjoy them. So if you are interested in my progress on the 19 shadows that I am currently trying to pan, then stay tuned. But first, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider doing so before you go. I post videos every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and without further ado, let's get into my progress. So before we begin, I always like to point out if there are shadows from palettes or things not currently in like the ones that I selected that I hit pan on. And I have two. Basically, if I hit pan on 19 different eyeshadows, even if they're not in the ones that were randomly selected, I'll be happy. And I'm kind of cheating and going through my collection and trying to pan as many like lid shades as possible, lid setting shades. So I hit pan on two palettes outside of the 19 going in my project. First, I hit pan on this Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air, and I hit pan on this, again, lid setting shade right here. I will try and insert pictures in case you can't see the actual pan. And then from the Studio Makeup On The Go eyeshadow palette, I also hit pan on this lid setting shade right here as well. I'm really close on another lid setting shade in my Tarte Lit in Bloom palette, so we'll see if I hit that the next month. And then if I ever hit pan on like a colorful shade, I'll let you guys know too. But wanted to let you know that I did hit pan on those two shades this month. Okay, so jumping into all of the palettes in the actual project. So I shared with you guys last month I did hit pan on another lid setting shade. This was one that was actually going in my project. This is the Nude Awakening palette from Wet n Wild, and again, it's just this lid setting shade right here. I pretty much haven't touched this palette the rest or the entirety of March, just because I was focused on other lid setting shades and trying to hit pan on those. I may eventually circle back to this and see if I can use this shade up completely. I don't think I would have a problem with that. In fact, maybe I will just pull this one this month and really try and focus on that one and see how much of that shade I can get used up. And then really exciting news, I was able to hit pan on another shade going in this project from the ABH Master Palette by Mario. I hit pan on Lula, which is this cool toned brown shade down here. It's just a little baby pan, and I was so excited when I finally hit pan on this. In fact, I didn't even realize that I had hit pan, and then I went to use it one morning and I was like, wait a minute, I think I have pan going there. So since hitting pan, I have kind of put this one away for a little bit and started focusing on other palettes within this project, because I'm getting like a little bit nervous about some of these for sure. And I love this palette. This one's not a hard one for me to reach for, so I'm trying to now focus on palettes that I just haven't been reaching for as much. And this was one that I was focused on in March. I have been trying to select a handful of palettes to focus on each month, just to try and get some really good use out of those shades and see if that works for hitting pan. Okay, I'm going to save the palettes that I actually was working on for last, so we'll do the not so exciting progress first. So first we have my Huda Emerald Obsessions palette, and this one I am trying to pan this shade right here. I think I maybe used this one or two times this month, so you won't be able to see much visible progress. And what I do love about this project is it's forcing me to reach into a plethora of different palettes, and it'll be interesting to see the picture when I started this project versus the picture at the end. And even if I'm not hitting pan on the shades that I selected, I'll be interested to see my overall use of the whole palette and how that's changed, because for a palette like this, I maybe would have reached into this one or two times in the entire year of 2019, just because I don't reach for greens that often. But because this is in my project, it's forcing me to open this palette, you know, not quite often, but if I'm focusing on it, and it's forcing me to look at the entire palette and see how I can use all of the shadows. I'm not just thinking about how I can use the one shadow that was randomly selected from the palette. So I just wanted to point that out. Not very exciting progress on this Huda Emerald one. I do think this is going to be one of the more challenging pans to hit this year, but we'll see. Then I have my Huda Mauve Obsessions, and I didn't really reach for this one at all just because I know this will be an easier palette for me to focus on in the fall time. I love this palette. It's one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection, but I do tend to reach for this one more in the fall time. I am trying to pan this middle mauve shade, and I don't think I'll have a problem if I start reaching for this around like September or October, so that's why you're not seeing too much progress out of this one. I do love this whole palette, so really excited to pull this one, but it's just not one that I'm reaching for right now. Okay, so I have my ABH Prism palette, and I used this a couple times this month. This is one that I really focused on in January and February. Now I am currently trying to pan this Lure shade, and I still have a ways to go in this one, but I'm still not too concerned about it. And this one, what I love is, since pulling this into this project, this was a virtually untouched palette, and I have played with so many different shades out of this palette now that I've pulled it. So this is definitely one of those palettes that like before just kind of sat in my collection because it kind of intimidated me just based on the color story and that it was a more difficult formula to work with. But pulling it out, I've been having a ton of fun with it. I've even gotten some good use out of this Obsidian shade, which is just a pure black, which normally does intimidate me. So even though I haven't hit pan and I'm still a ways away from pan in the shade out of this palette that I selected, I've gotten some really great use out of the entirety of this palette that I wouldn't have gotten had this not been in this project. And then we have my Carly Bible palette, and this palette was just going unloved in my collection, which is a shame because it actually is a really good quality palette. Now I know you can't get this anymore, but it was very affordable, and it's just a nice neutral palette, super easy to work with, super easy to create like neutral looks with. The only thing I'll say is not one you'll necessarily want to travel with because it is bigger and bulkier. But I am currently trying to shade, this is another mauve tone shade, this middle shade, and I've gotten some really good use out of this darker shade out here. This is one I'm going to set aside probably again more until the fall time just because this screams more fall vibes to me. I typically tend to wear more darker mauve toned colors in the fall time, but I have had some really good, I have had some fun with this palette thus far. This shimmery purple shade is also really beautiful, and the highlights down here I absolutely love as well. So this has been a fun one to pull because again, this was just basically sitting untouched in my collection, and now I've gotten to experiment with quite a few shades from this palette, and I really have learned to love and enjoy this. Okay, so then we have my Queen of Hearts palette from Colored Rain, and I am going to be trying to pan Royal Prerogative, which is just this beautiful kind of medium toned brown. And I don't think I touched this one time. I was so excited to get this palette, and this is one of those that like now that it's in my hands I just don't reach for it. This is another one I think I'll reach for more towards like the fall time, and I have created a couple looks from this palette that I've really enjoyed. So it's a great beautiful palette. For some reason I just don't use it. It kind of gives me, I've talked about this on my channel before, and I've heard many other YouTubers say this, when you spend a lot of money on a product, sometimes you only reach for it on special occasions because you know like you spent so much money on it, and if for some reason you were to finish the product off you'd have to go rebuy it. For some reason I'm in that mindset at times, and this palette just puts me in that mindset, and I don't know why, but it's a beautiful palette. The shimmers are outstanding, so I am really excited to get some more use out of it, but I do think I'm going to hold off on focusing on this palette for a couple more months. And the last palette, I don't even know if I reached into this one, and this is going to be a challenge. So I currently have 3 separate shades that I'm trying to pan from here. I have this bone white shade, like literally pure white, and then I have this like greeny red shimmer shade up here, and then this like orangey red bronzy shade right here, which actually I could have used with my eye look today. I really do like the shimmers. I think that they're beautiful, and the white is fine. I can use it to set my lids, although it is literally like a stark white. This was a really expensive palette, and I bought it thinking I needed a rainbow palette in my life because I was going to do a ton of colorful looks, but that just doesn't necessarily fit my everyday makeup vibes. You know, I work 5 days a week, and frankly color intimidates me. I do think this is going to be another one of those challenging palettes for me to pan, even though I chose shades that I can make work in my everyday. This is going to definitely be more of a challenging product. You guys will have to let me know if you own this palette, and if you have like Instagram pics with like pictures of you with using this palette, you should tag me because I would love to see some of the looks that have been created with this, but I'm just like not creative enough to get good use out of this palette, I don't feel like. Okay, so then I do have my 4 palettes that I was focused on, but first I wanted to touch on the 4 single shadows that I'm focused on. On the bottom here, I just have a couple other shades that I tossed in, but not for this project. This quad right here are the 4 randomly selected shades from my single shadow collection, and I gotta be honest, I've been really bad about using the single shadows. I have used this like transition shade. This is Makeup Geek's Creme Brulee a few times, and I think I'll have no problem panning this, but it's the other shades, especially the black and the white, that I think are going to give me a really hard time. Typically when I've gone in with a black this year, and I rarely go in with blacks, I've gone in with Obsidian from the Prism palette, and I don't even know if I've reached for this once. Maybe one time, but if at all, only one time. And then this one I think is Shroom from MAC, which is more of like an inner corner highlight or a brow bone highlight, so I haven't gotten much use out of that. And then this one is Burlesque by Makeup Geek, and I just, oopsies, good thing that one didn't shatter. Burlesque is going to have to be one that, again, I go in more in the fall time because it just gives me more of those fall time vibes. So I do think that my single shadows are going to be a bit of a stretch. They're definitely going to be a challenge, but we'll see what we can get through. Okay, so then we have the 4 palettes that I was focused on this month. First, from Alamar Cosmetics, I have been focusing on this shade right here, which is called La Costa. And I've been using this all over the lid and as an inner corner highlight. It's a beautiful shade. It's a phenomenal shimmer shade. It can come off a bit foiled and you don't need a wet brush to use it, so I really like it. And I use this one a lot this month, but I feel like it doesn't necessarily reflect the amount of times that I use this. So this is going to be a challenging one to pan, one that I'm going to have to focus on a lot in order to pan. This palette is beautiful. This shade right here, El Malico, I don't know how to pronounce that, the green shade, is so pretty. I almost wish that I chose that, even though I know like green shimmer I wouldn't get as much use out of it, but I really want to take this palette and create like a beautiful like blue-green look from it. But this is the one that I'm trying to pan. I am going to keep this in the palettes that I'm trying to focus on over the next month, because this is a really versatile, easy palette kind of to focus on throughout the entire year, but I think that shimmer will be beautiful for this time of year, so I am going to continue to focus on that shade this month. Then we have my Urban Decay Born to Run palette. It is what's on my eyes today, and I'm currently focusing on this Riff shade right here, which is just, again, kind of like a medium toned crease shade, which I've gotten some good use out of this, but this is a super pressed, like it's pressed firmly, and the formula is a firmly pressed eyeshadow, so I feel like it just doesn't look like I have as much progress as I've used the shade a ton, and I feel like, again, progress isn't necessarily reflected. I have had some fun with this Accelerate shade. I really like Breakaway as well as Blaze, and I've used Good As Gone and Punk as well to sort of deepen up the crease. I haven't played around as much with the colors. I definitely do want to play with the colors more over the next couple months. This is another one I'm going to focus on at least through April and May. I am going to Vegas at the beginning of May, and I do intend to bring this palette with me, so this is another one I'm going to keep in and continue to focus on the next few months. Then we have my Deuce palette from Juvia's Place, and the shade that I'm trying to pan here is called Berry Mousse, which is this shade right here, which is kind of like a taupey brownie lid shade, and I haven't been using this to set my lids. I've actually been using this just as like my first transition shade, because it just lays down the lightest hint of color. Sometimes I'll just put this in my crease for work, and it just like gives just the smallest amount of depth or dimension to the eyes, and I'll call it good. I would say I started focusing on this the last couple weeks of the month, and I'm definitely going to be keeping this one in over the course of the next few months, basically until I hit pan on this one. This is an easy one for me to just, again, pop in for work. So until I hit pan, I'm going to keep this kind of in the rotation of like what I'm really focused on. I've really learned to love and enjoy this palette. I love this Tarte shade right here. It's this beautiful like pinky purple duochrome shift. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I really enjoy that shade. I really like this puff shade. I also really like, I really have been enjoying the shimmers in this palette. I think they're beautiful. So love that this was included in this project. And then finally, you guys, we have my Weekend Festival palette from BH Cosmetics. I love this palette. I think it's such a good palette, and this is definitely one that I'm going to keep in rotation throughout the course of the next few months and the entire summer, because it's such a fun palette, especially for the summertime. The two shades that I'm trying to pan from this palette are Escape right here, and then also Boho right here. And I've gotten some really good use out of both of those shades. I don't know how well you'll be able to tell, but I'm hoping that in my inserted pictures you'll be able to see that I've actually played around with quite a few shades from this palette over the course of the last month. I've gotten some use out of Hipster, a lot of use out of this beautiful Solstice shade, a little bit of use out of Spirit. I've used Flash, I've used Trixie, I've used Candy. So I have really been trying to use as many shades from this as possible. I think it's a beautiful palette. I know they just released I don't know if it's like a sister palette to this, but another palette that has to do with like EDM or like festival, and I really want to pick that palette up. So really have been enjoying this. And again, this one is also going to stay in rotation. So basically these four palettes are going to be the ones that I still continue to work on, as well as I think my single shadows throughout the course of the next couple months. The rest of my palettes feel more like fall toned vibes, so I'll focus on those as we reach fall time. I don't even want to think about that. But that is it for this 19 Shadows in 2019 update. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what eyeshadows you've panned on in the last couple months, or let me know what your favorite palettes are, anything like that. I love hearing from you guys. Other than that, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider doing so before you go, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye!